Boy, hey, welcome back to my update on getting my master's degree and the classes I'm doing for fall semester 2025. I know I'm a little dressed up, a little bit more than I usually am on these videos. I'm just back-to-back meetings today, so I'm trying to squeeze this video into everything else that I've been doing today. But I want to give you just an update on some things, how things are going. To talk about first my research project, I know I discussed that quite a bit last week on shifting it. So instead of focusing on American laws and changes to LDS church worship, I'm looking at what happened when the church went outside of the United States. What kinds of issues with like freedom of religion and other things did they run into in other nations? So I went out to the library to look up some more sources and found 8 more books to read. So I've got a ton of reading to do these next couple weeks to look at, what was it like when the church went into Japan or New Zealand or South America or even Canada, UK and other places like that to learn. So a couple of things that I know of that have been really interesting is Germany was a really interesting one. So the church was established in Germany quite a long time before World War II, but it changed dramatically during World War II. Like church worship shifted a lot under the Nazi reign in Germany. When Nazis took over after World War One, they had to shift things, and genealogy became a big deal because to be a true German, you had to prove you were at least 3 generations of Germanic descent to say, I'm a true German. So genealogy was huge because that proved you were really German or not. If you were Jewish, you didn't want people to know that you had that in your descendancy because Jews were not seen as good enough with the Germans. Basically, they were the immigrants. They were the trash people that are taking over and ruining Germanic uh, culture and history, which is part of the reason why everybody over there hated the Jews so much, is they were seen as ruining Germanic culture. So genealogy was big during the Nazi regime to prove your descendancy. Um, the It's interesting that the Nazis actually liked some of the church programs, like the basketball, the young men's program, and things that the church did with a lot of basketball and stuff. They liked that, and they were utilizing some of those ideas for the Hitler Youth. So the church ended up actually having to get rid of all their youth programs because the government started providing youth programs, and any youth programs that competed against the government ones were nixed. So the church had to get rid of their youth programs, weekday youth programs, because the government was providing those now. Jews were not allowed to worship in some of the LDS churches, which to us sounds really strange to think about. But at the time, the challenges they were facing, I actually found a story of a gentleman who was Jewish. He had Jewish descent. He was not allowed to be baptized. He wanted to be baptized, but they wouldn't let him because Jewish descent. So that changed a lot of stuff for how the church ran in Germany. Russia's a really fascinating one that happens. I didn't realize that Joseph Smith established a mission to Russia back in like 1850s. It didn't really get off the ground very well, not as good as like the other European missions did. So it was Russia was kind of lumped into some of the other missions as an extra mission to work with to help build membership there. Under Stalin, it didn't do so well. So the religion didn't favor well under Stalin, and so it kind of went away. So people that were Mormon, for a while there, they thought the Mormon church just like disappeared. It just all went away, wasn't in Russia anymore. But now we're starting to hear stories, even after World War II, they're starting to hear stories of people who were quote unquote possibly Mormon, but they just quietly lived their religion at home and didn't outwardly do a whole lot with it because they would go to jail or get killed if they did. So it's really interesting. And when they came after World War One, there was a series of laws as the communists came in and says, nope, we think God is a total it's a total weaponized way to manipulate people for capitalism. And so they says, no, we want to kick out all religion, so we're going to be atheist. No religion at all. We're going to just say the state is everything. You worship the state, you follow the state will take care of you. You know, in a way, the state kind of takes that place of God, if you will, even though they didn't really appoint the state to be like a god, but they got rid of religion and the state took that vacuum basically. So they actually wrote a book of rules and regulations of how to persecute religions and like what were the rules and laws against it. Like you couldn't teach you one of the rules I'm trying to investigate is you couldn't teach your children your religion. Because if you did and the kids squealed, the parents went to the gulags. They went to these work camps where they fed you poorly and overworked you until you died, basically. But there's it was so they didn't even teach their kids their religion. They just stayed really hush hush. Those who knew each other that did religion would meet together privately sometimes and talk about it, but they wouldn't let new people come in. They didn't try to proselyte because anybody that knew that they worshipped something other than the state philosophies basically was a death sentence. So there's some stories of I think it was an American soldier that was captured in World War II, and he ended up in one of the Russian gulags. And he happened to, in his journal, happened to write down that he found people of different religions in these gulags, and Mormons was one of the ones that he mentioned. And this is like 1946-ish time frame. So he's like, oh, look, there's actually here's some indications that there were members of the church, but because of the oppression of communism, they couldn't actively worship. So that's gonna be a fun one to add in my papers. I got a couple books on Russia to study and to learn more about that, how that worked out. So here's the interesting thing about this manual, this Russian booklet of laws about what to do with religious people. It was never publicly published. They kept it as the communist leader. Only in the ranks of the communist leaders had access to this document, this booklet, basically. Somebody eventually, from what I'm finding out, has leaked it out, and now it's been examined since World War II and has been looked at. So I'm finding lots of secondary sources that are quoting things, but I haven't been able to get back to a primary source yet. At least not one. I think I found one that might be in Russian, a website that lists it all, but it's all in Russian, so I got to get it translated to confirm. Is that really their laws? Is this website based on that original document or not? That original document's probably gone. I don't know where it went, but when communism fell, they kind of got rid of all that stuff, basically. So it was when later, when Stalin, after the war, started to change his perspective on religion and allowed the Orthodox Church to come back and do more, and other churches too, as it started to shift, they probably got rid of that book to hide any evidence of that they persecuted people. So it was pretty crazy. So I got a ton of research to do to dig more into that. So we're going to have fun there. In my mediation class this week, we talked about narratives. So in a conflict, think about somebody you've been in conflict with. You have a perspective or a narrative of the conflict, your side of the story. And the other person has their narrative or their side of the story. Most of the time, our narratives protect us and blame the other person. So as a mediator, you got to listen to these narratives and understand it. So what's fascinating about this is to take the time to look at the metaphors of the narrative. Look at why did they phrase their narrative the way they did? And what are some underlying assumptions that might help us understand about their side of the story, basically. So this is something that we can look at to say, okay, why is your narrative designed the way it is? Why do you set it up that way? Where are they overgeneralizing things? Where have they deleted information that would be harmful to their side of the story? So you try to look for the holes in it where there's maybe missing facts or information, and that'll help you to start to understand their narrative. And the goal isn't to question their narrative, but to understand it and start to guide them to think about, how do I fill in these gaps? What else is there? So that you can start to say, okay, well, yeah, okay, maybe my narrative's not the best, because you want to shift them to a position where they're willing to be open to understand the other side of the story. And as those facts come together, then they start to realize maybe I am part of the problem. Not the full problem, maybe, but maybe I'm part of it. And I need to be willing to acknowledge my my part of the problem. So that's in mediation, is you learn their narratives and then get them in the same room together to talk, to ask questions. You can start to sort through those narratives, those assumptions, those ideas, to help them see the other side and go, oh yeah, well, I guess maybe I shouldn't have said that. That was incorrect of me. Okay, maybe I shouldn't have done this. And as they start to do that, they're going to start moving towards their own solution, which is really cool. So that was really fun to learn and just think through that more, how to play with their narratives and understand it better, and look for where is the missing information, where is the distortions in their narrative, those kinds of things, to say where's the truth and where's the embellishments of it, basically. So for my Islam class, we learned a lot about the history, the origins of Islam. Now everybody knows, Muhammad had his visions, his revelations. He memorized them, told them to the people. People eventually wrote them down, which is the Quran. And then he started to build this civilization, these followers that were following Islam. Not all the Arab tribes were at the time, but they started to move in that direction as they saw the popularity of Islam. Other ones are like, hey, we're kind of this little small tribe out here in the middle of nowhere. We're not the dominant tribe. So it's better for us to rally with these groups that are coming together, because they're building a pretty good tribe in Islam. So all the smaller tribes started to come together to join Islam, and it kind of built this bigger tribe. Muhammad was of the Arabic tribe known as the Quraysh. I hope I said that right. They were the ones that controlled Mecca and that area. So they ended up into some battles with each other, because they didn't like the fact that even though Muhammad was of the Quraysh tribe, the leaders of the tribe saw him as a threat to their own power. And so, because they knew, if I join Islam, I have to basically surrender all my power and authority to Muhammad, the prophet, to follow God. And so they didn't like that. So there was conflicts back and forth. The Islamic groups eventually beat out the Quraysh tribes and took over Mecca. Shortly after that, Muhammad died. And now they're like, oh crap, now what do we do? Muhammad didn't appoint a successor. In fact, it's claimed that he said, you guys got to sort it out when I'm done. Well, one of the people that came forward was Muhammad's cousin, not cousin, son, Ali. And so Ali steps forward and says, hey, I'm Muhammad's son. Maybe I should be the ruler. And there's a lot of people who are like, actually, that makes sense. He is a descendant of the prophet. He's of that kind of holy family, if you will. Maybe we should make him our leader. Well, one of the other tribes said, no, that's not right. We shouldn't follow this father-son idea. So we want to be there. So we are Abu Bakr was like a right-hand man for Muhammad. He helped him with a lot of stuff. And so he said, I want to do it. He was of the Umayyad tribe. And so there was a bit of some conflict back and forth. Well, Ali was later killed, or not killed, he wasn't killed at that time. So Abu Bakr came into power and took over in those debates. And then when Abu Bakr died, he brought in his son, I think it was, that was Uthman. I think they were the same tribe, the Umayyad tribe. Uthman comes in, he takes over as the caliphate. So the leader of Islam is the caliph. That's the word they use for leader. The caliphate is kind of the leadership team that runs Islam. Now, Islam is kind of a nation state. There's not a lot of distinction made between the religion and the governmental organization behind Islam. And so it kind of is like a bit of a nation state. So they eventually grew. Under Uthman, they grew and did a lot. When Uthman died, not a lot of people liked Uthman. He was assassinated. Then another gentleman, what was his name? Starts with an M. Muwaya, something like that. I'm pretty sure I got his name wrong. But anyways, this guy comes up, M comes up, and he takes over. And so Ali's been trying to like get himself he keeps coming back every time there's a succession crisis, going, hey, maybe I should be here. And he eventually gets beat back and loses. I think after Uthman, Ali dies when Muayyar or something like that, when he comes in, he ends up contending against Hussein, Ali's son, so the prophet's grandson, and that's a big civil war that happens. That's so eventually, I think eventually there was like the first civil war was the people who followed Ali and the people who followed Uthman, who's the successor, was this Muawiyah guy. They went to battle a lot, and then when Ali was killed, and so this Muawiyah guy took over kind of by default, got into the caliphate because he was the only guy standing as the leader. So they end up rolling everybody in. Under his reign, the idea of Islam grew quite a bit. Under Uthman, the previous guy, they actually conquered. They went from conquering like the Arab areas, like the place we call Saudi Arabia today. They eventually conquered through Egypt and across North Africa. They went up through Syria and Damascus, up through into Turkey a little bit, took a little bit of the Byzantine Empire, the eastern part of the Byzantine Empire. They got taken over by Islam, and then all the way through the Persian area as well, where the Sassanid nation was, they were destroyed by Islam. And what's interesting is we got talking about, well, why would this small group of Arabic tribes suddenly come together and form this force that was able to basically win lands away from Byzantine as well as take over the Sassanid Empire? And this darn fly flying around. And what happened was the Byzantine and the Sassanid empires had been spending a lot of time fighting, and they had become really weak. So here suddenly from the south, the Arabs come up and dominate, both of them. So the challenge was, though, is the Sassanids were of the religion of Zoroastrian. That's kind of the world's first ecologically friendly religion. They're really interesting. But because they were polytheistic, the Israelites, the Islam groups, the Muslims, saw the Sassanids as the pagans. And they just said, your religion is not worth it, so we're just clearing house. We're going to wipe you guys out or force you out of the area. For the Christians in the Byzantine Empire, so Byzantine Empire was the kind of the leftover remnants of the Roman Empire after Constantine had switched it to Christianity. So Byzantine was just before they started to split into the Catholic and the Orthodox Christian philosophies and ideas. I think Orientalist Christianity had already gone into Africa by that point. So the Byzantine Empire is interesting because Muslims see Christians, the followers of Christ, because Christ is an important prophet in Islam. The Christians are brothers to Islam. They're fellow worshipers. Not exactly equal with, Muslim to Muslim equal, but they're seen as like the cousins of the Muslims. So they're part of the extended family of Islam. So they ended up adopting a lot of military, governmental strategies, ideas from the Byzantine Empire. Because of this rapid expansion, they're like, holy crap, we're like this religion that just took over a huge area of land. Now we need to have government. We need to do this. So they tried to incorporate Byzantine ideas to create the first Islamic state, this big nation that was covering this whole area. And then under the Muawiyah guy, when he was under Muayyah's son, Yazid, so they're trying to keep it in the tribe. The Umayyad tribe basically keeps the caliphate within people inside their tribe, kind of father-son idea. The tribe of Ali, who was more the family descendants of Muhammad, disagreed, and so they ended up in a second civil war that didn't last very long with Yazid and Hussein. And so Hussein was killed brutally by Yazid and his troops and the Umayyad troops. And so everybody's like, dude, didn't you break your own Islamic rules to be that brutal? That's bad. And the other problem is Yazid's forces accidentally, according to history, burned the Kaaba down. So that's the big square monument in Mecca that they walk around during the Hajj and their pilgrimage. His forces actually burned it down. So they had to rebuild it and fix it. So The Umayyad tribe was kind of like, oh yeah, you guys have been in power for a long time, but I don't know if we like you guys. So they were kind of diminishing in their importance and their social credibility and political stability within the Islamic Empire. So Yazid takes over, but he suddenly dies after all these weird PR problems that happen with his troops, and um, the next empire inside Islam starts to arise up. So by this time, by this time, Islam covers the whole Middle East, covers over towards the borders of India. They go up into like modern Turkey, up in that area a little bit, where the Byzantine Empire was more. Then they cover North Africa from like Egypt, almost all the way over to the west coast, where Morocco is today, almost that far. And then the Muslims actually got into Spain and Portugal, and made it as far as France before they were stopped by some of the groups up there, basically. So they had a huge empire. What's fascinating is like even most of the stuff we think of with Spain, like they grow lots of oranges and lots of agriculture there. Most of that is because of the Muslims who used their this vast empire they had created and were moving goods and things around. So Spain owes a lot to these early days of when Islam basically controlled Spain before it was Spain at the time. So as you know, you have to admit that Islam was had a very profound effect on the economy and the wealth distribution through this area from the 700s all the way up to the 1400s AD or CE, whichever one you want to use. So they made a big impact that even Europe and the Middle East has to admit today, Islam was a strong influence for a lot of good things that happened. They weren't just barbarians that came in and killed people and did stupid stuff all the time, like a lot of the Orientalist ideas would have us believe today. So they grew, and then they split. The Abbasid empire started to rise. So the Abbasids was this group of people who were like, hey, we're kind of the family of Muhammad, the prophet, and we think the Umayyad tribe is going away from Islam. I mean, granted, to have an empire that big, the governmental rules and ideas don't always map over exactly into Islamic rules, and so you kind of have to follow different rules. Islam wasn't meant to be this dominating world power. Just the rules of the Quran weren't meant to be that big. So they struggled to do that. So they adopted like Byzantine rules and other things. And so the Abbasid tribe was like, you guys aren't to was like, hey, you guys, the Umayyad tribe is not good enough, not Islamic enough. And so we need to take them over. So they started building alliances with other Arabic tribes and other outsider groups and others, and they formed an army that was eventually big enough that they did a surprise attack against the Umayyad tribe and basically just pushed them out of power. So the Abbasid tribe took over Europe, not Europe, but like the Middle East and over towards Asia and North Africa and that all that up area over there by Greece and things. They took that area over as part of their empire. And then the Umayyad tribe ended up staying in Spain. And so when that happened, they both said, okay, look, the Abbasid Empire said, we're not going to come take you guys out. If you don't mess with us, we won't mess with you. And the Umayyad tribe was like, okay, cool. So in a way, we have this division in Islam of two tribes claiming to be the caliphate, the real Islam. This is where, if you've heard today the idea of Sunni Islam and Shia or Shiite Islam, this is where that comes from. The Abbasid Empire, which took over most of Islam at the time, was Shia. The Sunni Islam was the Umayyad tribes, which were in Spain. And they were later relegated down to about Granada by the 1400s as Christianity pushed through Europe, which is when it sets up the problems with the diasporic Jews in Spain that Christopher Columbus has to deal with. So fascinating stuff. Say what you will about Islam, but in this early period of developmental times, pre-European countries, as Roman Empire fell apart, as Christianity divided, Islam played a massive role in changing how commerce worked and contributed to some of the wealth of the area. And of course, this leads to the Crusades later on as Christianity grows and takes over Europe, and they now see, hey, we want to take out Islam. We want to reclaim Jerusalem as the Holy Land for Christianity, and that's where the Crusades come in to go back and take out the Nation of Islam that controls that area as well. So I'm sure we're going to talk about Crusades here in another future lecture, which I'm looking forward to. That'll be fun to understand those better. So that was kind of the fun part of history of Islam that we were learning this week. So we're going to get into understanding the differences between Sunni and Shia Islam in the next week or two, which will be fun. So thanks for watching. Hope you guys really enjoyed these videos. If you have questions about any of the things that I'm learning, please put them in the comments. I'll be more than happy to answer those questions. And watch the other videos we have too. We have a lot of great videos. We're doing the Book of Mormon right now. We've done the Bible already. We're going to actually do the Quran next year. Go over the scriptures to read them and understand them better. So a lot of fun stuff coming. We're going to do Torah. We're going to do Bhagavad Gita as well as the Upanishads and those for Hinduism, and then even get into Confucianism, the Analects and things, and then get into Buddhism and understand the sacred writings there too. So several years more scriptures coming that we're going to talk about and discuss. So if you like us and you want to donate, use the link in the video description to donate as well if you'd like. We're not a 501c3. It's just me putting these videos out. So if you want to donate, if you want to say, hey, we'll financially support you and help you in your journeys to get your master's degree and keep moving forward, doing all this research, that would be appreciative, but not necessary. So these videos will be free, and I want to keep them that way as best as I can. So we might do some paid courses in the future to get like more deeper into some of these topics and ideas as well. So we'll see. But thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next one.